There is that one game that is revealed in a trailer that goes viral that you can't help but be intrigued by. It is a bonus if it's an indie game with an enticing appeal. How could one not fall in love with the idea of playing as a goose and going around honking at and distracting people? Developed by House, an indie studio in Melbourne, Australia. Hey, that's where I live. And supported by Film Victoria, Australia, this game about a goose initially didn't have a name, so it was known as Untitled Goose Game. And that name stuck. Let's see what it's like to teach a lesson to horrible humans as an innocent little goose. Or are those adjectives supposed to be swapped around? The premise of Untitled Goose Game is very simple. You are a goose going through an English village, making sure any one person will have a story to tell their kids or grandkids about how they had an absolutely horrible day. Makes sense because, let's be real here, geese are a nuisance in real life. Before going on to talk about how one plays that role, let's devote little time to talking about the production values, which are actually really good. With aesthetics similar to the studio's first project, Push Me Pull You, the focus is on 2D colours and less polygons and no texturing, yet everything looks sharp and generally runs smoothly, making the game's art style stand out from other games. The way the humans, and especially the goose is animated, is also good. In fact, the goose moves and behaves like, well, a goose. Similar praise can be given to the animation of the humans, as they wave their arms around appropriately and even occasionally stuff up their routine actions like we would in real life. The game doesn't feature much in the way of music, with cues of simple, plunky and sometimes elegant piano music that accompany moments of quiet stealth, surprise encounters, or even farce. The sound effects also give the job done, whether it's wind, birds, water, the grunts of the people, and of course, the goose's feet, and incessant honking. That honking is one of the first things you're taught in a very short tutorial at the game's beginning, where you'll find the goose is pretty easy to control. You move on a linear path while honking, running, picking up and interacting with things. Sometimes you have to crouch to perform such an action, plus you can spread your wings. And then you arrive at the first of the game's multiple areas where you get to look at a list of objectives to complete. Deliberately inspired by Super Mario 64's system of progression, the objectives can be completed in almost any order and are given a title, leaving you to mostly figure out on your own what to do and how. You don't have to complete all of them to pass on to the next area. It seems you only have to complete all but just one of them, before getting a prompt to complete a new main objective to go to the next area, though this is relatively unclear. Any one of these objectives basically amounts to being a nuisance as the goose you are, whether it's stealing objects or even more complex ones such as moving a character into a certain spot, or swapping or moving objects around to make unexpected things happen, sometimes to multiple people at once. The way to generally accomplish these objectives means the game is best categorized as a stealth puzzle game, and certainly without the violence of games such as Metal Gear Solid. In fact, if you do something wrong, you are merely pushed or shooed away, which gives you infinite opportunity to try and figure out the solutions. For the most part, there is more than one way to complete an objective, for it comes down to observing the patterns of the people, distracting them, hiding or grabbing an item away from them. You can take a bit of time, as well as moving back and forth between places and objects to know the answer, but at least that gives you the freedom to basically be mean to people for essentially no reason. The writer of this review bears no responsibility for people mimicking this goose's actions in real life, or thinking they can adopt a goose as a pet. There are some frustrations involved, such as the camera moving erratically depending on which human is close to the goose, and the occasional lack of precision in the goose's movement or actually grabbing an object. Sometimes the goose, humans or objects, will get stuck on other objects or parts of the environment, which mostly made it hard at one point for me personally to steal the thermos in the first area of the game. It can potentially be a bit frustrating sometimes to complete objectives that involve taking an item to a certain place or object, such as a picnic blanket, without a human noticing and taking the items away, but this ultimately means that you have to figure out how to avoid that happening. It's all generally logical with a reasonable level of challenge. In fact, it's so fun to solve the puzzles and engage in stealth, as well as just being a nuisance in the game's spare moments, that it's almost hard to stop playing. The problem with it being hard to stop playing, though, is that it is a really short game. This is to be expected of indie games, and Untitled Goose Game doesn't overstay its welcome. It will probably take about 4 hours to complete, maybe much more, or much less, for the sake of speedrunning if you know what you're doing. After you see the end credits having done all the main tasks, you do get extra objectives and time trials, which can be tricky. The level of challenge is overall fair, which combined with the understandable controls and premise, makes it mostly good for the non-gamer / first time gamer crowd. It's hard not to imagine returning to this game every once in a while for speedrunning, multiple ways to achieve an objective, not to mention a good old-fashioned bit of honking of the human race. In fact, you humans should have a look at this game. And how can you not, with its nice production values and engaging gameplay that can actually make you laugh? The only dilemma to you may be the price, which one might consider a little steep for a short game. But as of this review's upload, if you get it now on the Nintendo eShop on the Switch, you can save a few dollars, not including gold points. The Switch version is probably the version you should choose over the PC and Mac versions because of the Epic Games Store. Okay, not saying much about that. All in all, there's only really one word to describe Untitled Goose Game, and that is... wait. A goose interfered with a script! That word is not spelled T-E-R-R-I-I-F-I-C-C-C. Don't consult a goose for matters of spelling, people.